Welcome to the Motivation Chapters. Today, we're not talking about grammar, vocabulary, or pronunciation. We're talking about something deeper, something that millions of English learners feel every single day, but rarely talk about. Fear. The fear of speaking, the fear of being judged, the fear of being laughed at, the fear of opening your mouth and making a mistake. Maybe you've felt it too. You studied English for years, you watched videos, memorized words, read grammar rules. Yet, when it's time to speak, your heart beats faster. Your mouth goes dry. Your brain suddenly goes blank. And the only thought that remains is, what if I sound stupid? You see, fear doesn't come from not knowing English. It comes from believing you're not good enough to speak it. Let me tell you a story that represents every English learner, maybe even you. There was a boy named Ryan. Ryan wasn't bad at English. In fact, he understood most words. But when the teacher asked him to stand and speak, everything inside him froze. He could feel everyone's eyes staring at him. His hands started shaking. He tried to say a sentence, but his voice cracked. The class laughed. That day, Ryan decided, I'll never speak in class again. And for years, he kept that promise. He sat silently, even when he knew the answer. He avoided conversations, avoided opportunities. He told himself, I'll speak when I'm perfect. But perfection never came, because fear and perfection cannot live together. Fear always whispers, not yet, and perfection keeps you waiting forever. Maybe you're like Ryan. Maybe you tell yourself, I'll start speaking when I'm ready. But here's the truth. You'll never feel ready. No one ever does. Every fluent speaker you admire today was once afraid. They too made mistakes, froze in conversations, felt embarrassed. But they kept going. They didn't become fluent because they stopped being afraid. They became fluent because they learned to speak even while afraid. Fluency is not born in comfort. It's built in the fire of embarrassment, effort, and courage. You see, language learning isn't just about words. It's about identity. When you speak in another language, you're showing a different version of yourself, one that feels weaker, smaller, less confident. That's why it hurts so much. But remember this: fear is not your enemy. Silence is. Fear means you care. Fear means you want to grow. Fear means your dream still matters. So if you've ever felt scared to speak English, congratulations. It means you're alive, you're human, and you're standing exactly where every fluent speaker once stood, at the edge of fear. The journey from fear to fluency doesn't begin with perfect grammar. It begins with one small step, choosing to speak even when you're afraid. Music rises gently, because fear doesn't disappear by waiting. It disappears by walking through it. And that's what Ryan decided to do next. He was tired of being silent. He was tired of feeling small. So one day, he whispered to himself, no more. He took a deep breath, and for the first time, he spoke, not perfectly, not confidently, but honestly. And that was the beginning of everything.
Rayan had finally decided to speak. For years, fear had been his master. But that day, something changed. It wasn't courage that made him speak. It was exhaustion. He was simply tired of feeling small. He whispered his first English sentence to himself, quietly in his room. I will not be afraid anymore. It wasn't perfect. His pronunciation was off, but for the first time, he didn't care. He felt something powerful, a spark of freedom. The next morning, he stood in front of the mirror. He looked at his reflection and said, "Good morning. How are you today?" His voice trembled. It sounded strange to hear himself speak English out loud. He smiled awkwardly and repeated it again and again and again. That small mirror became his first classroom. His reflection became his first audience, and his mistakes became his teachers. But of course, life doesn't reward you instantly. A few weeks later, Rayan tried to speak English with a classmate. He said something simple. "Yesterday I go to market." The boy smirked. He laughed. He corrected him. "You went to the market." And then he walked away, still laughing. That moment broke something inside Rayan. He went home in silence. He sat on his bed, replaying that moment again and again in his head. And that's the thing about learning a language. It's not just about learning words. It's about surviving moments like that. Moments where people make you feel small. Moments where your confidence collapses. Moments where you question whether it's even worth it. That night, Rayan didn't practice. He didn't open his book. He didn't speak to his mirror. He just stared at the ceiling and thought, maybe English isn't for me. Maybe you've felt that too. You start with motivation. You practice, you try, you fail, and then one comment, one laugh, one mistake, it destroys your confidence. But let me tell you something powerful. Failure doesn't mean you're not improving. It means you're trying. And trying is the one thing most people are too afraid to do. The people who laughed at Rayan, they were fluent, yes, but they had forgotten what it meant to struggle. And those who forget the struggle often forget compassion. Rayan's story is not just his, it's every learner's story. The pain of trying and failing is something every English learner experiences, but few talk about it. The truth is, you will fail. You will make mistakes. You will be corrected. You will be laughed at, and it will hurt. But pain is not your enemy. Pain is proof that you're growing. Every failure is a bruise, not a scar. It heals, and when it does, it leaves you stronger than before. After that humiliating day, Rayan stopped practicing for a while. But then something unexpected happened. He was scrolling through his phone one night and saw a video. It was a man speaking in English, not perfectly, but passionately. The man said, "You don't need to be perfect to inspire people. You just need to be real." That line hit him like lightning. He realized that he didn't need to sound like a native. He didn't need to speak without mistakes. He just needed to speak with honesty, courage, and heart. That was his second turning point. He opened his notebook again, and he wrote a simple sentence, "My mistakes are my teachers." And from that day, he started again, this time differently. He stopped memorizing difficult grammar rules. He stopped worrying about accents. He focused on speaking every day, no matter how broken his English sounded. He started talking to himself in English while walking, eating, studying. Slowly, something changed. He was no longer afraid of sounding wrong. He was proud that he was trying. That's the secret most people miss. You don't learn English by reading. You learn by using it. Fluency doesn't come from books. It comes from mistakes. One day, his teacher announced an English presentation competition. His classmates laughed again. "Rayan, Speaking in English, he'll never do it. But this time, Rayan didn't care. He had already faced their laughter before and survived. He smiled quietly and signed up. The day of the competition arrived. His palms were sweaty. His heart was pounding. He walked up to the stage. He looked at the audience, all the faces that once made him afraid. He took a deep breath. He started speaking slowly. "Good morning, everyone. My name is Rayan, and I am afraid to speak English." The crowd went silent. Nobody expected that. He continued, "Yes, I am afraid. I was afraid for years. But today I am not here to show perfect English. I am here to show courage." For the next few minutes, Rayan spoke about his journey, his fear, his failures, his small victories. His English wasn't perfect, but his voice was full of honesty. When he finished, something amazing happened. No one laughed. Instead, the room filled with applause. Because people don't connect with perfection. They connect with authenticity. And Rayan's story was real. He didn't win the competition, but that day he won something greater, his confidence.
Every English learner has a Rayan inside them, a version of themselves that is scared, insecure, and afraid to fail. But remember, it's okay to be afraid. It's okay to fail. It's okay to not be perfect. What's not okay is giving up. Because fluency isn't about never failing. It's about never stopping. And that's how Rayan's journey continued. One word, one sentence, one mistake at a time. Slowly, fear started fading, and in its place, a quiet kind of confidence began to grow. There are moments in life that look small from the outside, but inside, they change everything. For Rayan, that moment was the day of the competition. He didn't win any prize, but he walked off that stage as a completely different person. He had faced his biggest fear and survived. He learned something powerful that day. Courage doesn't mean you stop being afraid. It means you keep speaking, even when your voice shakes. That small victory planted a seed inside him. For the first time in his life, Rayan stopped calling himself bad at English. Instead, he started calling himself a learner. And that changed everything, because words matter. The words you say to yourself become the walls or the wings of your life. When you say, "I can't," your brain stops looking for a way. When you say, "I'm learning," your brain starts building one. So Rayan changed the way he spoke to himself. He replaced "I'm not good enough" with "I'm getting better every day." And slowly, those words began to come true. He built a new routine, one that didn't depend on motivation, but on discipline. Every morning before school, he spent 15 minutes speaking in English to himself. Every night, he watched short English videos, not to study grammar, but to listen to rhythm, tone, and emotion. He mimicked what he heard. He shadowed the voices. He became his own coach. At first, it felt strange, even funny. But soon, those small moments added up. His pronunciation got clearer. His sentences became smoother. And most importantly, he stopped judging himself every time he spoke. But of course, life isn't a straight line. There were still days when he doubted himself. Days when he felt he wasn't improving fast enough. Days when he compared himself to others and thought, "They speak so easily, why can't I?" And one evening, after a long, tiring day, Rayan almost gave up again. He sat in his room, frustrated. He whispered, "Maybe I'll never be fluent." Then his phone buzzed. It was a message from a friend. The same classmate who once laughed at him. The message said, "Hey, Rayan, your speech last week, it inspired me, man. You're brave." Rayan stared at the message, his eyes filling with tears. He realized something beautiful. The same person who once made him doubt himself was now motivated by him. That's what courage does. When you face your fear, you not only free yourself, you give others permission to do the same. From that day, Rayan decided that English was no longer a subject to learn. It was a skill to live. He started using it in small, natural ways, journaling his thoughts, writing English captions, joining online speaking groups. He even made mistakes publicly, but instead of hiding, he laughed at them. He realized that language isn't about perfection, it's about connection. And every time he connected with someone in English, his confidence grew.
Let's pause here for a moment, because maybe you, the listener, need to hear this too. If you're watching this video and you've been struggling with English, if you've been afraid to speak, afraid to fail, afraid to sound wrong, please listen carefully. You are already on your way. Fluency doesn't start when you speak perfectly. It starts the moment you decide not to quit. You don't need perfect grammar to express yourself. You need honesty. You don't need a perfect accent to be understood. You need confidence. You don't need to wait for the right moment. You just need to start. Now. Because there's no right time. There's only this moment. That's what Rayan understood. He realized that English was not something outside of him. It was something he could build within himself. So he stopped asking, "When will I be fluent?" and started asking, "What can I do today to move one step closer?" He began to enjoy the process, the small victories. When he understood a new word, he celebrated. When he made a mistake and corrected it, he smiled. When he helped another student with English, he felt proud. Fluency, he realized, is not a destination. It's a journey, one that rewards consistency, not perfection. Months passed, and then came another big moment. His first job interview. The interview would be entirely in English. Old fear tried to return. The same heartbeat, the same sweaty palms, the same doubts. But this time, something was different. He looked in the mirror, smiled, and said, "Yes, I'm nervous, but I've walked through this before. I can do it again." He entered the interview room. He spoke clearly, honestly, confidently. He didn't use big, fancy words, just simple English from the heart. When it ended, the interviewer smiled and said, "Your English isn't perfect, but your confidence is impressive." And that was enough. He got the job.
That moment was Rayan's turning point. Not because he spoke perfect English, but because he finally believed in himself. He realized that fluency is not about words, it's about freedom. The freedom to express who you are, the freedom to connect, the freedom to dream bigger. And that's when fear finally lost its power.
So my friend, if you're listening to this, remember, you are not behind. You are not slow. You are simply becoming. Every mistake you make is a brick in the foundation of your fluency. Every word you speak, even broken ones, are steps toward confidence. Every fear you face makes you stronger. Don't stop now. You've already come so far. Your turning point could be today, right now, the moment you choose to believe that you can do this. Because you can. And one day, when you look back, you'll realize that this entire journey, all the fear, all the failure, all the courage, it was never just about learning English. It was about discovering who you really are. Years passed. Rayan had grown, not just in language, but in life. He still made mistakes sometimes. He still mispronounced a few words, but those things no longer defined him, because now his voice was stronger than his fear. He had gone from a boy who couldn't say a sentence out loud to a young man who now led meetings in English. From avoiding conversations to mentoring others who once felt the same fear he did. One afternoon, Rayan sat at a cafe, watching a group of students nearby. They were practicing English together, shy, nervous, laughing awkwardly at their own mistakes. He smiled, remembering his own journey. One of them turned to him and asked, "Excuse me, sir, can you tell me how to become fluent in English?" Rayan paused. He looked at their hopeful faces and said softly, "Fluency isn't something you find, it's something you build, one brave moment at a time." They listened closely. He continued, "Don't chase perfection, chase expression. Don't fear mistakes, fear silence. And remember, fluency is not about English, it's about freedom." The student smiled, and for Rayan, that moment meant everything, because he had finally become the person he once needed.
When Rayan returned home that evening, he opened his old notebook, the one where he had written, "Mistakes are my teachers." He turned the pages, filled with notes, scribbles, dreams. At the end, he wrote one final line. "Fear taught me silence. Courage taught me voice. And my voice taught me freedom." He closed the notebook and smiled, because now he understood fluency isn't when you stop making mistakes. It's when mistakes stop making you afraid. That night, Rayan recorded a short video and posted it online. He spoke in English, simple, honest words. "If you're scared to speak English, I understand you. I was you. But please, don't wait for the perfect day. It will never come. Start today. Start afraid. Start small. Because one day you'll look back and realize that the small steps you took when no one believed in you changed everything." He didn't expect anyone to watch, but within a week, the video reached thousands of learners around the world. Comments poured in. "I feel the same way. Thank you for saying this. Now I have hope again." And that's when Rayan realized something beautiful. The very language that once made him feel powerless was now the language through which he was empowering others.
That's the real fluency. Not just speaking another language, but using it to touch another heart. Maybe you're listening to this right now, feeling that same fear Rayan once felt. Maybe you've stayed quiet for too long. Maybe you think your accent, your grammar, your mistakes make you less. But let me tell you this, they don't. Your accent is proof of courage. It means you dared to speak in a language that wasn't yours. That's bravery, not imperfection. So stop waiting for the perfect moment. Start with what you have right now. Speak, make mistakes, learn, repeat. Because fluency isn't an overnight miracle. It's a lifetime journey, a conversation between courage and consistency. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be real. And now, as this story closes, I want you to remember one thing. You are not behind. You are becoming. Every time you choose to speak instead of staying silent, you take another step from fear to fluency. And one day, you'll tell your story, the story of how you turned your fear into strength, your mistakes into lessons, and your silence into a voice that inspires millions. That day will come, because it always does for those who keep going.
This was the Motivation Chapters. And this was your reminder that fluency isn't just about English. It's about finding the courage to become who you were meant to be. Keep learning. Keep believing. Keep speaking, even when your voice trembles, because your story is still being written.